Yes. Good morning, chat. Good morning. Chat. So, guys, you already know what time it is. If you don't know what time it is, then you'll get to know what time it is. You'll find out what time it is. It's Bible time. And I wish I could say play the clip at this point, but eventually we will get there. But I'll have to say, I just have to say, again, I am not a pastor, I'm not a preacher, I am just a girl. I'm here to simply read this book for all the people who know about the Bible but think it's something hard to read because of the King James Version or this version and that version and all the versions that low-key hard to understand and read. So I'm here to read this book for the people who interested basically who feel like they're too busy to read the Bible, or they don't want to read the Bible, or they find it too hard to understand. Okay. So without further ado, let's get into it. You can go back to the past pods or videos to see exactly how we got here. We read the beginning of the book, the very introduction and everything, Genesis, the beginnings, everything. And today, on the third day, we are on Cain and Abel. The tragic story of Cain and Abel shows how dramatically sin had affected humanity. Less than a generation after being banished from the Garden of Eden, jealousy leads to murder. Cain murders Abel. Genesis 4 1 to 16. Now Adam had sexual relations with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant. When she gave birth to Cain, she said, "With the Lord's help, I have produced a man." Later, she gave birth to his brother and named him Abel. When they grew up, Abel became a shepherd, while Cain cultivated the ground. When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best of the firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. "Why are you so angry?" the Lord asked Cain. "Why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. But you must subdue it and be its master." One day Cain suggested to his brother, "Let's go out into the fields." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. "I don't know," Cain responded. "Am I my brother?" Oh no, sorry. Sorry. Afterward, the Lord asked Cain, "Where is your brother? Where is Abel?" "I don't know," Cain responded. "Am I my brother's guardian?" But the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed and banished from the ground, which has swallowed your brother's blood. No longer will the ground yield good crops for you. No matter how hard you work, from now on, you will be a homeless wanderer on the earth." Cain replied to the Lord, "My punishment is too great for me to bear. You have banished me from great. You have banished me from the land and from your presence. You have made me a homeless wanderer. Anyone who finds me will kill me." The Lord replied, "No, for I will give a sevenfold punishment to anyone who kills you." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain to warn anyone who might try to kill him. So Cain left the Lord's presence and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. The descendants of Cain. Cain had sexual relations with his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Then Cain found a city which he named Enoch after his son. Enoch had a name Enoch had a son named Irad. Irad became the father of Mehujael. Mehujael became the father of Methushael. Methushael became the father of Lamech. Lamech married two women. The first was named Ada, and the second was Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal, who was the first of those who raised livestock and lived in tents. His brother's name was Jubal, the first of all who played the harp and flute. Lamech's other wife, Zillah, gave birth to a son named Tubal Cain. He became an expert in forging tools of bronze and iron. Tubal Cain had a sister named Nama. One day Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. Listen to me, you wives of Lamech. I have killed a man who attacked me, a young man who wounded me. If someone who kills Cain is punished 7 times, then the one who kills me will be punished 77 times. The birth of Seth. Adam had sexual relations with his wife again, and she gave birth to another son. She named him Seth, for she said, God has granted me another son in place of Abel, whom Cain killed. When Seth grew up, he had a son and named him Enosh. At that time, people first began to worship the Lord by name. Now going to the synopsis of that now. Sexual union means oneness and total knowledge of the other person. Sexual intercourse is the most intimate of acts, sealing a social, physical, and spiritual relationship. That is why God has reserved it for marriage alone. No longer was everything provided for Adam and Eve as it had been in the Garden of Eden, where their daily tasks were refreshing and delightful. Now they had to struggle against the elements in order to provide food, clothing, and shelter for themselves and their family. Cain became a farmer while Abel became a shepherd. In parts of the Middle East today, these ancient occupations are still practiced much as they were in Cain and Abel's time. The Bible doesn't say why God did not accept Cain's gift. Perhaps Cain's attitude was improper, or perhaps his gift was not up to God's standards. Proverbs 21:27 says, the sacrifice of an evil person is detestable, especially when it is offered with wrong motives. God evaluates both our motives and the quality of what we offer Him. When we give to God and others, we should have a joyful heart because of what we are able to give. We should not worry about how much we are giving up. For all things are God's in the first place. Instead, we should joyfully give to God our best in time, money, possessions, and talents. How do you react when someone suggests you have done something wrong? Do you move to correct the mistake or deny that you need to correct it? After Cain's gift was rejected, God gave him the chance to right his wrong and try again. God even encouraged him to do this, but Cain refused. And the rest of his life is a startling example of what happens to those who refuse to admit their mistakes. The next time someone suggests you are wrong, take an honest look at yourself and choose God's way instead of Cain's. For Cain to subdue the sin that was waiting to attack and destroy him, he would have to give up his jealous anger so that sin would not find a foothold in his life. Sin is still waiting to attack and destroy us today. Like Cain, we will be victims of sin if we do not master it. But we cannot master sin in our own strength. Instead, we must turn to God to receive faith for ourselves and turn to other believers to receive encouragement and strength. The Holy Spirit will help us master sin. This will be a lifelong battle, but it will be over when we are face to face with Christ. This is the first murder, taking a life by shedding human blood. Blood represents life, Leviticus 17. If blood is removed from a living creature, it will die. Because God created human life in his image, only God should take life away. Adam and Eve's disobedience brought sin into the human race. They may have thought their sin, eating a piece of fruit, wasn't very bad, but notice how quickly their sinful nature developed in their children. Simple disobedience quickly degenerated into outright murder. Adam and Eve acted only against God, but Cain acted against both God and other people. A small sin has a way of growing out of control. Let God help you with your little sins before they turn into tragedies. Cain was severely punished for his murder. God judges all sins and punishes appropriately, not out of vengeance, but because he desires to correct us and restore our fellowship with him. When you're corrected, don't resent it. Instead, renew your fellowship with God. We have heard about only 4 people so far: Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel. 2 questions arise. Why was Cain worried about being killed by others? And where did he get his wife? Adam and Eve had numerous children. They had been told to fill the earth. Cain's guilt and fear over killing his brother was heavy, and he probably feared repercussions from his family. If he was capable of murder, so were they. The wife Cain chose may have been one of his sisters or a niece. The human race was still genetically pure, and there was no fear of side effects from marrying relatives. The expression sevenfold punishment means that the person's punishment would be complete, thorough, and much worse than that received by Cain for his sin. Unfortunately, when left to themselves, people tend to get worse instead of better. This short summary of Lamech's family shows the variety of talent and ability God gives humans. It also presents the continuous development of sin as time passes. Another killing occurred, presumably in self defense. Violence was on the rise. 2 distinct groups were emerging: those who showed indifference to sin and evil, and those who worshipped the Lord. The descendants of Seth, full stop, Genesis 4:26. Seth would take Abel's place as leader of a line of God's faithful people. Seth would take Abel's place as leader of a line of God's faithful people. Abel. Abel was the second child born into the world, but the first one to obey God. All we know about this man is that his parents were Adam and Eve. He was a shepherd. He presented pleasing offerings to God, and his life was ended at the hands of his jealous older brother Cain. The Bible doesn't tell us why God liked Abel's gift and disliked Cain's, but both Cain and Abel knew what God expected. Only Abel obeyed. Throughout history, Abel is remembered for his obedience and faith, Hebrew 11:4, and he is called righteous, Matthew 23:35. The Bible is filled with God's general guidelines and expectations for our lives. It is also filled with more specific directions. Like Abel, we must obey regardless of the cost and trust God. Ugh. Like Abel, we must obey regardless of the cost and trust God to make things right. Strengths and accomplishments mentioned in the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11. First shepherd and first martyr for truth. I really don't know how to pronounce that word. Lessons from his life. God hears those who come to him. God recognizes the innocent person and sooner or later punishes the guilty. Vital statistics were just outside of Eden. Occupation, shepherd. Relatives, parents. Adam and Eve, brother, Cain. Key verse. It was by faith that Abel brought a more acceptable offering to God than Cain did. Abel's offering gave evidence that he was a righteous man, and God showed his approval of his gifts. Although Abel is long dead, he still speaks to us by his example of faith. Abel's story is told in Genesis 4. He is also mentioned in Matthew 23 and Luke 11 and Hebrews 11 and 12. Cain. Reload your whole twisted because you know what it's showing for me. But it's saying wrong. In spite of parents' efforts and worries, conflicts between children in a family seem inevitable. Sibling relationships allow both competition and cooperation. In most cases, the mixture of loving and fighting eventually creates a strong bond between brothers and sisters. But for Cain, the conflict and jealousy overcame whatever love he had for Abel. And while we don't know many details of this first child's life, his story can still teach us. Cain was angry, furious. Both he and his brother Abel had given offerings to God and his had been rejected. Cain's reaction gives us a clue that his attitude was probably wrong from the start. Cain had a choice to make. He could correct his attitude about his offering to God, or he could take his anger out on his brother. His decision is a clear reminder of how often we are aware of opposite choices, yet choose the wrong one. We may not be choosing to murder, but we are still intentionally choosing what we shouldn't. The feelings motivating our behavior can't always be changed by simple thought power. But here we can begin to experience God's willingness to help. Asking for his help to do what is right can prevent us from settling into motion actions that we will later regret. Strengths and accomplishments. First human child. First to follow in father's profession, farming. Weaknesses and mistakes. When disappointed, reacted in anger. Took the negative option even when a positive possibility was offered. Was the first murderer. Lessons from his life. Anger is not necessarily a sin, but actions motivated by anger can be sinful. Anger should be the energy behind good action, not evil action. What we offer to God must be from the heart, the best we are and have. The consequences of sin may last a lifetime. Vital statistics. Where? Near Eden. Occupation? Farmer. Morning. Then one day. Relatives? Parents? Adam and Eve. Brothers? Abel, Seth, and the others. Morning. Not mentioned by name. Kivas. You will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master. Genesis 4:7. Cain's story is told in Genesis 4. He is also mentioned in Hebrews 11, 1 John, and Jude 1, 11. Jude, Jude. All right, that was that. Now we'll go into number 3, Adam's descendants. And tomorrow we'll start a new beginning for humanity. Adam's descendants. Beginning with Adam and Eve, humanity grew to become independent families and tribes. From Adam to Noah. This is the written account of the descendants of Adam. When God created human beings, he made them to be like himself. He created them male and female, and he blessed them and called them human. When Adam was 130 years old, he became the father of a son who was just like him in his very image. He named his son Seth. After the birth of Seth, Adam lived another 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Adam lived 930 years, and then he died. When Seth was 105 years old, he became the father of Enosh. After the birth of Enosh, Seth lived another 807 years. And he had other sons and daughters. Seth lived 912 years and then he died. When Enosh was 90 years old, he became the father of Canaan. After the birth of Canaan, Enosh lived another 815 years and he had other sons and daughters. Enosh lived 905 years and then he died. When Canaan was 70 years old, he became the father of Mahalalel. Guys, really, you know, I say it proper. Mahalalel. Damn, and I thought I make a mistake, I don't realize it. No, that was it. After the birth of Mahalalel, Canaan lived another 840 years and he had other sons and daughters. Canaan lived 910 years and then he died. When Mahalalel was 65 years old, he became the father of Jared. After the birth of Jared, Mahalalel lived another 830 years and he had other sons and daughters. Mahalalel lived 895 years and then he died. When Jared was 162 years old, he became the father of Enoch. After the birth of Enoch, Jared lived another 800 years and he had other sons and daughters. Jared lived 962 years and then he died. When Enoch was 65 years old, he became the father of Methuselah. After the birth of Methuselah, Enoch lived in close fellowship with God for another 300 years and he had other sons and daughters. Enoch lived 365 years, walking in close fellowship with God. Then one day he disappeared because God took him. When Methuselah was 182 years old, he became the father of Lamech. After the birth of Lamech, Methuselah lived another 782 years and he had other sons and daughters. Methuselah lived 969 years and then he died. When Lamech was 182 years old, he became the father of a son. Lamech named his son Noah, for he said, "May he bring us relief from our work and the painful labor of farming this ground that the Lord has cursed." After the birth of Noah, Lamech lived another 595 years and he had other sons and daughters. Lamech lived 777 years and then he died. By the time Noah was 500 years old, he was the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. That was the end. Synopsis. The Bible contains several lists of ancestors called genealogies. Genealogies. They are not intended to be exhaustive and may include only famous people or the heads of families. He became the father of could refer not just to a son, but also to a more distant descendant. Why are genealogies included in the Bible? The Hebrew people passed on their beliefs through oral tradition. For many years, in many places, writing was primitive or non existent. Stories were told to children who passed them on to their children. Genealogies gave a skeletal outline that helped people remember the stories. For centuries, these genealogies were added to and passed down from family to family. Even more important than preserving family tradition, genealogies were included to confirm the Bible's promise that the coming Messiah, Jesus Christ, would be born into the line of Abraham. Genealogies point out that people are important to God as individuals. Therefore, God refers to people by name, mentioning their lifespan and descendants. The next time you feel overwhelmed in a vast crowd, remember that the focus of God's attention and love is on the individual, on you. All humans be all human beings are related going back to Adam and Eve. All people form a family that shares one flesh and blood. Remember this when prejudice enters your mind or hatred invades your feelings. Each person is a valuable and unique creation of God. How did these people live so long? Some believe that the ages listed here were lengths of family dynasties rather than ages of individual men. Those who think these were actual ages offer three explanations. One, the human race was more genetically pure in this early time period with less disease to shorten lifespans. Two, no rain had yet fallen on the earth, and the expanse of the waters of the heavens, Genesis 1 7, kept out harmful cosmic rays and shielded people from environmental factors that hasten aging. Three, God gave people longer lives so they would have time to fill the earth. And that was the readings of the morning. Tomorrow we'll get into a new beginning for humanity.